I'm Terrence James. You're watching another episode of Neutral Reviews, where we do real reviews for real decisions. And today, you are watching your very first Neutral Reviews of the Year. So the rules are pretty simple for this. We're going to break it down in a handful of new car categories, and each of those new car categories has to be one that I've driven. Now, of course, this being our first year as reviewers, we're not going to have a huge breadth of variations there, but still, it's a good tradition that we can start. So what we'll do with each of those new car categories as well is we're going to try to break them into what I call fancy vehicles, basically ones that only a small percentage of people can afford, and then for the rest of us, normal people, vehicles in each of those categories. And we're also going to do some funny stories, and then that will lead us into our review of the year. Now, is a little tricky part. Now, that review of the year doesn't necessarily have to be a new car because we're having trouble securing new cars, and there's still some really awesome used cars out there. It could be anything. For instance, we did a 2017 Ford Focus RS, so that there could be one of them. Spoiler alert, it's not. And also, we have a truck category with no trucks, so spoiler alert, there is no winner in that one. But again, we want to have that for future. Also, we are not going to have an EV category. I was going to, but then I changed my mind because we really hope that this show is going to continue and be very successful. And if that's the case, EV is what's coming, and more every year. We're seeing more and more EVs. So eventually, in the next couple of years, a lot of the lineups are going to be EV or hybrid. When I say EV, things like that. So we're just going to throw them into the mix. So let's get started. Our first category is going to be our fancy fun vehicle. So now, it was pretty exciting because with the fancy fun vehicle, there was a time there in the summer where people were teasing me that knew me, saying that you're just starting and you're getting all these amazing, sports cars and things like that. You're going to do normal people vehicles, and then kind of the fun and excitement ended for me there as the weather started to change and allocations, and so did those fun vehicles. But anyway, we got to do some really cool ones actually for our first year on the channel. We got to do a brand new, at the time, 2022 Jaguar F-Type P450, and we also did in this category that we're talking about right now, the new, again at the time, Porsche Taycan GTS, and also the Q60 Red Sport. Now, out of those three vehicles, they're vastly different, including price range. That Porsche started around $200,000, and that Q60 Red Sport, I think, was in the $60,000, $70,000 range, and that F-Type, if I remember correctly, was around $120,000, something like that. And of course, the Porsche being fully electric, and then you have a twin turbocharged V6 in that Q60 Red Sport Coupe, and then you had the P450 supercharged V8 in that F-Type. So, again, very different. When I was driving that Taycan, I felt like I was driving the future. And I never really understood Porsche until I started this new career in reviewing, and now I get it because I've got a lot more exposure. I'm a Volkswagen Group owner, and one of the things that I like with my Volkswagen is that I feel like I'm driving a budget Audi, and not in the sense of, oh, look at me, I have a really nice car. It's in the sense of, if you're paying that amount of money and you drive a lot, you want a nice vehicle, and the Volkswagen Group make a vehicle between Audi, Volkswagen, and Porsche especially. They have vehicles where you really, really feel like it's well built, like you're in something really secure and well engineered. So with that being so, the Porsche is like that on steroids, obviously. When you get in one of those things, they're fairly conservative, and that's one of the other things I like too with the styling is I'm not a flashy person, nor do I want to be. I understand why people are, but it's kind of a happy medium. And that Porsche Taycan, I thought for the first time, was a nice looking vehicle for Porsche that wasn't a 911 or a Cayman. Especially those first Cayennes and Macans and things like that. They looked like a very bloated 911. I just found them hideous. And it was, to be fair for those designers, it's a really tough challenge that they were asked to do, because they had to take an iconic sports car and turn it into a giant plump SUV. So I thought that they did their best, and that Cayenne that we reviewed, which we'll talk about, obviously they did a lot better, but still, it's a giant 911. So that I found that Taycan was truly a nice looking, sleek, elegant looking design. Looked like, very much like your Volkswagen Group vehicles that you can dress them up or dress them down. But I felt like I was driving the future because the whole thing was a screen. and just the technology, like the 800 volt architecture, with the fast charging and, the transmission that it has for the different speeds for acceleration and economy. And, it was quite something. But again, it was very strange as well, because if it was my first electric vehicle, so there's quite the one to drive for your first time, a $200,000 Porsche GTS. But, it literally, my mother who watches the show could have easily got into that. It was surprisingly easy to drive, but it was very fast. And I went to go through an intersection like you normally would, just kind of zip through. But when you zip through in something like that, if you're not used to it, I went through that intersection so fast I almost hit the person in front of me, just because I wasn't used to it. I'm a very confident and experienced driver. So it is something to get used to. It was quite a vehicle. Now, when we looked at that Q60 Red Sport again, it was an amazing vehicle. I'm a huge fan of Infiniti, Nissan. Through the years, I, often came close to buying a Nissan 370 many times, just due to practicality issues. Kind of changed our mind on that, but great vehicle. And to drive that one, it's kind of the best of the best. And you've got that amazing engine that's now in the new Nissan Z, and it works well, sounds good, really fast, great vehicle. And when we look at that F-Type, well, I didn't have the opportunity. Jaguar didn't even have the P575, which is the top level of that one. But even the P450, it sounded the part, super fast still, really nice vehicle. Out of all the reviews that we did this year, by far got the most attention. I actually had an older lady and her mother that were picnicking, and they came over and literally starfished in front of the vehicle and asked for a selfie, and knew more about the E-Type and F-Types and everything and the history. It was, it was really interesting to talk to them. But anyway, yeah, so it was a great vehicle. But drum roll, the winner for our first fancy fun car of the year is going to be that P450 for the reasons I just said. It's an iconic car. Is there better cars out there? Absolutely. Is the Taycan the future and things like that? Is the Q Sport a great price for what it is? Yes, but that Jaguar, like I said, it's a head turner. It will give you theater that the 911 won't at that price point. Probably not as good as a Performer, but yeah, it's definitely an exciting vehicle. So let's do our normal everyday people fun vehicle or enthusiast category, essentially. So in that one, again, we were very blessed this year and had lots of amazing vehicles. So we're going to narrow that down to the 22 Subaru BRZ, the 22 WRX, both all new, and also we are going to look at the 21 Kia Stinger. Now, when I did that Kia Stinger at the time, that was a new vehicle, so that's why we're throwing it in here. And again, that Kia Stinger, you could probably put it in the fancy category because you're starting to get up there in price, but if we're fair, that really is a lot of times lumped in with enthusiast vehicles, and I really enjoyed it a lot. It was a big boy and girl vehicle. Like, you could tell it was well put together, more luxury and GT than sports car, but still very capable, a good looking car, a lot of fun. Now that WRX, same thing. It's an icon. It's one of the cars that got me interested in cars way back when, in the early 2000s. So that was exciting and fun for me to do, and a great vehicle, a huge improvement for that car. Not everybody likes the looks, but I started to warm up to them when we looked at them in person, for sure. And then lastly, like I said, the 22 BRZ. Now that one had me quite divided because we are in the BRZ studio right now. I own a 2020 Sportec RS, so that was the top trim at the time. They don't offer anything like that. It was basically almost, I would say, like 90 some odd % of what the TS or tuned by STI version of the car was, but it was a very limited run in Canada, anywhere from 300 to 500, and not even every year, I believe. So anyway, I think as their swan song for the 2020, for the people that missed out on the TS like myself, I did try, I just could not get allocation for one. The RS was the next best thing because it's very, very close. Basically, there's certain things that I'm missing, like welds and more adhesives that I can't do much about, but I have basically everything else. So with that being so, I was very divided because they're the same but different. The 22 and the 20, there was no 21, but I really, really enjoyed the vehicle nonetheless. And as I said, it's a daily debate whether or not I should make the switch or not. So now, when we look at those three, drum roll again, we give it to the 2022 Subaru WRX. And again, mainly because that vehicle, as I said, was such a surprise to me compared to what I was going into with the expectations, even though I'm obviously a big BRZ fan and promote that vehicle for people that can make it work in their lives. So now let's move on to our people haulers, and we're going to go to our fancy people hauler first. Now that one, again, we got really lucky this year. We had some really nice one. We had a Porsche Cayenne 2022. We had a 2022 Volvo XC90 Recharge, top level trim on that one. And also, I mean, we had all kinds, and I debated on which ones to include for the third, not necessarily in that order, obviously in the category, which was that Nissan Q60, because I really liked it. I really like Infiniti. I like the people that work there. Just for whatever reason, that brand is not sinking a lot of money into that right now. That end of things, they're concentrating more on Nissan. And it's a shame because those Infiniti vehicles are super nice and they're a really good price point. So if you are somebody that can afford a fancy vehicle, and you're not one of the folks that are about the prestige of it all, and again, no offense to Infiniti, they just kind of dropped a little bit over the years compared to your Lexus and things like that. But regardless, it's a very nice vehicle, so it's included in the mix. I really liked it a lot. Now that XC90 Recharge, again, it was phenomenal. I went in that pleasantly surprised. I try not to judge people by a rule, and I do care about the economy, of course, or the environment, of course, like everyone. But on the same note, I don't, get overly nuts with it. But when I do see giant SUVs, sometimes I question it, not necessarily just for the environment, things like that. Just, is it absolutely necessary that you're driving around such a giant vehicle? But anyway, there was no, as far as the economical or environmental concerns, that was what I found so surprising and enjoyable with that vehicle, because it was a plug-in hybrid. So I drove that vehicle on and off all day for the review and kept with under the 50 kilometers of approximate range that you have. And it was great. I didn't use any gas, but I do often travel pretty far. And it was nice to know that I had the option, if I owned a vehicle that is, of having a gasoline engine to where I didn't have to worry about that. That was really, really nice, I have to say. Yeah, so in this category here, the other one that we want to look at is the Porsche Cayenne. Now, that was interesting. That is our most popular video, even though it's not necessarily our best video, because it was one of the first ones. And I think one of the reasons that it was so successful in this business, real estate is location, location, location. This one is timing, and vehicle. And in that one, it was a good time. I got that video out right away when it was still relevant. And also, what was important with that one is most reviewers do, your S versions or your type this or that, whereas that was a base model. So I think that a lot of shoppers, were looking for something like that, and my video was there. But the point is, even at the base model vehicle, I was so impressed with that Cayenne. And again, for the reasons we were talking about with the Taycan, with the level of precision, quality, that kind of down the middle of where they kind of hit just the sweet spot of everything, and a nice conservative look. I really enjoyed that vehicle a lot, and I would have to say that if I would have tested in or had the hybrid version, my decision may be different, because we, for this category, are going to go for that Volvo XC90. And one of the other reasons why I like the Volvo as well is because, to me, it is kind of the Swedish Volvo group, or Volkswagen group, in the sense of same idea. You feel like it's a really well-engineered vehicle. It's really nice, but very conservative as well, if you're not a flashy show-off type person. All right, now our normal everyday people hauler. So for most of us watching this video, including myself, I'm not a huge SUV, CUV person, as you probably know if you watch these videos, but I know there's a necessary reason that they're here. So we're going to narrow that down to the CR-V, the 2023 CR-V, the 2023 Mazda CX-50, the all-new one, and that's the updated Honda as well. And in that category, we're also going to look at, I believe, the Tiguan. And again, we did lots. This is a very popular segment, your compact and subcompact SUVs. But again, that Honda really surprised me. Everybody and their neighbor knows about, your Honda Pilots, or not Honda Pilots, the Honda CRVs. You know, it's one of the most popular SUVs on the road. We call it the Goldilocks vehicle because it stands out by not standing out at all. It just does everything really well. It's like a nice haircut. So that one was really impressive. I really, really enjoyed it. And the CX-50 for a different reason. I didn't know what to expect with that vehicle. I think it's more looks than anything, in the sense of it looks a lot more rugged than it actually is. I don't think they intend people to do much with it. But it was a nice looking vehicle, and it drove better than anything that I have driven in an SUV, CUV, whatever you want to call it, anything that's not a car that's lifted up a little bit. So I really enjoyed that. And then the Tiguan, again, being a Volkswagen owner, I own a GTI, is basically a giant GTI. It's on the same platform, and I really enjoyed it. And I did that one before, and I probably would have considered that as our winner. So I'm kind of spoiling this to say that it's not going to be, but drum roll again, we are going to give it to that CRV. And the reason we're giving it to the CRV is it's one of the #1 selling SUVs for a reason. It really is. It was, you know, aside from being a little sluggish, but they all are, I loved it. I really did. It kind of hit home for me. I really, really liked it. If I was stuck and had to get an SUV, I think I would probably get that one, especially. I haven't tested the hybrid yet, but again, probably that, because it's a little zippier, and you got, you know, like I said, a little bit more economical in the city and things like that. But all in all, it was really, really a great vehicle. It was my kind of size. Next is our off-road category, which you can kind of see right now. We're jiggling all around here. This is kind of on purpose and kind of not. We had a major snowstorm here in Ontario in the last few days over the holiday season here, which is very festive and looks nice, but making this video a little wild. But it's nice to see what the BRZ can do with some snow tires on it. Now, back to our next category, as we said, off-roader. Now this one, again, it's a little limited this year because we only had so much exposure, and we're building out that dealer network. So we're going to only have one vehicle in it, because this category we're breaking down into two. A true off-roader, like more of a rock crawler, like if you're into that type of thing, like if you're into track days, you know, you're gonna want a Honda Civic Type R type thing. Whereas, you know, if you're serious about your off-roading, this is your category. So with that being so, we only really did one this year. We could not get in with Ford yet. So we did not do a Bronco or anything else like that. So we're going to give it to the 2022 Jeep Rubicon Unlimited that we did, because that was an excellent, excellent vehicle. Really enjoyed it. I've owned Jeeps over the years, and having a 4-door version now that I'm a family man is nice, because you've got that fun and everything else with a higher level of practicality. So kind of wins by default this year. So now, as we said, we want to break this one not into fancy people and normal people categories, but what we want to do is break that into now what we call our adventurer category. And the reason why I say adventurer is something that's going to be not quite that rock crawler, but more than that CX-50 or something like that. And again, no offense to the CX-50. In that category, we're going to look at your Subaru Outback. I believe it was a 2022. I believe it was also our first review as well. And we're going to look at that. And we are also going to look at the V90. Now, again, that's a little bit more expensive, but it was a little bit more heavy duty in that category. And the brand new 2023 Subaru Solterra that we just did a week or two ago, fully electric. So now, again, kind of like our first category, is a really wide variation in those vehicles there. However, now, as we said, that Solterra, we'll just start there. It was interesting because it was one of my few EV vehicles, and it was they truly have designed it to get you off-road. That's kind of Subaru's thing, right? They want to do a good job in your daily driving and have a safe vehicle, but they also want to get people out of the office, so to speak, or out of the urban and into the active, as far as their marketing departments go. It's kind of the claim to fame and their idea on that. And that Outback Wilderness Edition, not my cup of tea, as they say, for looks. I'm not a huge fan of all that cladding. I get it. It's a trend, and I understand why it's there. Just not my cup of tea. But I have to say that that vehicle was surprising, because it was closer to the Jeep than the CX-50, if you know what I mean. It had the bigger tires, it had true long travel suspension by design, not just spacers, things like that. It had a CVT, but it was, I don't know what they call it, I'm saying sport one. It had paddles, and honestly, if you're not if you're a casual driver and you didn't even know about torque converters and DSGs and that type of thing, you would just think it's normal. It was pretty impressive that way. I could tell, but it was pretty good. And lots of space and things like that. It was a very competent and capable vehicle. That Solterra, again, probably in a different way or close to it, very similar to the confidence that inspires in you, to where it feels like a vehicle that you could take a little off-road on an adventure on a cottage somewhere that's a little, off the beaten path type thing. But, if you watch that video, which I encourage you to do, you have to be careful with the range, and to be fair, it's the same thing. You're going to use the gas engine when you leave the heater on all day and, burn up a lot of gas, but I don't think you'd burn up as much gas as you did battery. So what I mean by that is I had that vehicle all day, but I only drove about maybe 10 kilometers or less to take it to the location that I did. I do a lot of the scouting and driven it before to do a lot of the testing, because it's very limited, these vehicles. I'm not getting them yet from the press or the manufacturers. I'm literally getting them from dealers, and with the limited inventory nowadays, it makes it very, very challenging. So anyway, I don't have long with these vehicles, and I have to try to keep them close because a lot of them are being sold directly to customers, and sometimes there's literal lineups for me when I return. So they don't want any kilometers on those vehicles to speak of. So as I said, I only drove about 10 kilometers, let's say, but it was freezing cold here where I live, and I had the heater on pretty much all day. And of course, a lot of the B-roll footage, those screens look nicer when they're turned on than off, right? So I literally used approximately 80-90 kilometers worth of range for 1 0 to 60 run in less than 10 kilometers. So, most people that cottage are going to drive a few hours away, which would be a few hundred kilometers or over 100 miles, and that just means when you get to where you're going, you're not going to have a lot of battery power to do a lot of your adventuring type things, blowing up mattresses and beds or tires or, little barbecues or whatever the case is. You don't have a lot of power for that, and it's not the easiest thing to plug in when you're out in the middle of nowhere. So, that really limited the vehicle there, but as far as its actual capabilities go, it was pretty impressive. Now, the other one in that category was, we had the Solterra, that and the V90. The V90, it was, the V90 was really impressive. I really, I'm coming around on the Volvos. I really am. They're out of my price range right now, but very similar. Like I said, they're the Swedish Volkswagen group as far as I'm concerned. And that V90, again, is not my cup of tea for looks. I like my cars being cars, and, I'd probably go with a four-door truck if I had to get more space for the family type thing. But anyway, I thought it drove really nice. It was luxury, but it still had kind of that hint and flavor of adventurer, and it was a very capable vehicle. So on that category, we are going to drum roll again. We are giving this one to the 2022 Outback Wilderness Edition, because I think that it is, Subaru's claim to fame, and it truly felt the most capable. I would be very confident in most situations in that vehicle for active urban lifestyle. So let us, with no further ado, get into our very first 2022 Neutral Review of the Year. Now, it goes to our 2022 Subaru WRX with my upside down trophy. Congratulations, Subaru. You have made a vehicle that greatly surprised me. I'm not shocked very often. I really, really liked it. There's, obviously the Taycan was a runner-up. It was up there. I really liked that new BRZ. All the winners in all the different categories. But the reason why I chose that one is because what got me interested in cars, besides my dad growing up, was the Subaru. It was the Fast and Furious era. It was the Subaru WRX. I just got into the car business in my early 20s, late teens, early 20s, and obviously could not afford it. I ended up getting a Neon SRT4, which is still faster in a straight line than a brand new Civic Type R. Limited slip differential in the front. It was basically a really rough version of a Civic Type R. Now, I love the Civic Type R, and I know the Civic Type R is a lot better engineered, but I'm just saying it was a pretty good car at the time, but it was kind of like that front wheel drive. But anyway, I really wanted the STI and a WRX, or the WRX STI, and I just couldn't do it. So it was really exciting to be able to drive that WRX after all those years, because like I said, that's kind of what made it start. And what made me surprised was I did a lot of research. You don't see a lot of behind the scenes stuff. Hopefully this year we'll do more on social media. It's just trying to find the time for all that stuff. But what we want to do is try to show you a lot more of what goes on behind the scenes type thing. So what we do is we try to, where we can, drive as many similar cars, used, new, as we can to get ready for that video, because like I said, unfortunately I just don't have a ton of time to do more shooting, and I'm by myself, but I do want to be professional and prepared. So we took, I can't remember at the time if it was a 20 or a 21 model year, was the new, basically as new as I could find of the previous generation of WRX, and the new WRX is night and day, like not even on the same level. And I personally think that is because of this relationship with Toyota and Subaru. Many things I've heard from other established reviewers that you probably know and like and watch, as well as other journalists, you know, have all said that it's been rumored that because of this relationship with Toyota being the parent company with Subaru, that they negotiated that the STI gasoline version of the STI had to come off the lineup for the next couple years to give that GR Corolla fighting chance in the marketplace, and then the STI can be STI again, but it's going to be an EV. So will that be an STI? I don't know, but that will be for another video. So regardless, yeah, it is so much better than the previous version, and I just drove again just to double check. 2020 or 2021, again I can't remember, they're funny with their years sometimes, like there was no 21 BRZ, it just went 22 to 2022. Anyway, point is, it was as new as I could get my hands on STI, and that normal WRX new 2022 was so close to the STI in performance, it was uncanny. And I think it was for that reason that Subaru basically said, fine, okay, we can't use the STI, well, we're going to make the WRX as good as possible, and then with future iterations we can give some performance packs like they did with the BRZ and call it TS's or something, you know. But in the meantime, it is a very good vehicle, and I don't think you would be disappointed with it. And congratulations again to Subaru. So as we close out this video, I just want to thank all the subscribers who supported us to get us to this point, for a dream come true and to have a job that we really enjoy. They say that if you enjoy what you do, you never work another hour in your life, and that's what we hope, is to use this for good, this Neutral Reviews. And thank you for that support, because we're now a legitimate, fully monetized channel. So we'll look for big stuff coming up this year. Now, one of those things, hopefully very soon, we will have our upcoming vehicles that we're excited about this year. Now again, I can't promise we'll get our hands on them, being this new to the channel, but nonetheless, they're exciting vehicles that we're looking forward to coming out, such as your brand new fully redone Mustang, the new Ford GT, the Impreza hatchback, the new Prius. I mean, there's the new, I can't remember, it's EX90. Basically, it's the XC90, but rebranded and fully electric, and even more refined as well. So we probably, hopefully, will get one of them, and some of those others in the new Prius and things like that. So lots of things to look forward to in this upcoming year. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.